Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming back. This is Ken Shobler's number 48, and it's also the second one on teleportation that we did. We did the first one last week, and this is the second one. And we're going to have Chip read to us, and we've got some really cool connections to people in our group who knew some of the people as during this project and the Philadelphia experiment before that. And of course, my friend Rebecca Rose, who was part of the Montauk project herself, she sat in the chair. We had many, many discussions about what was going on and what happened to her and whatnot. So fantastic. Thanks, everyone. And Chip, thank you.
Welcome. All right, the book cover, The Montauk Project, Experiments in Time by Preston Nichols with Peter Moon.
So that's just
Yeah, you were good. You were good. That was perfect. So we could read it. There you
We
go.
have a picture of what is apparently the amplitron.
Big amplifier.
Yes, I'm assuming it's creating an EM field. Okay, essentially a high-powered UHF amplifier, ultra-high frequency amplifier. The amplitron serves as a final amplifier for the transmitter before a function was radiated out of the antenna. A large tube, it weighed 300 pounds, measured 35 inches at its largest dimension.
So one of the things I'll say is the reason why I got a hold of Peter Moon, or how we ended up knowing each other, was I sent an email to Peter and asked him if he knew what tube type, the number of the tube that was in there. And he said he did not know, but he said that was something that Preston Nichols would have known for sure. So yeah, that's how we ended up meeting each other.
Wow, that's with the shield off? Oh, no, that's different. Okay.
It's a different one, yeah.
Yeah. This is the thyrotron, one of 4 pulse thyrotrons that were used. These drove the output tube. By supplying the pulse through the pulse transformer to the output tube, the thyrotrons regulated the frequency hopping source. It was a frequency hopping that made mind control and bending of time possible.
Very important.
Yeah, sharing the EMF field with frequency variation.
And this
Watt
is
diagram.
Yeah.
okay.
We're looking at some input. I'll just briefly summarize it. There's a couple of big transformers in the middle, the Montauk chair, computer system up front. There's a 100,000 watt noise amp. The tail end of the thing, several switches and auxiliaries.
And a
Okay.
delta time connection to the antenna. That's really
out.
important. You can
Yeah.
see the delta T and the delta T out up there, and the delta T on the one transformer, and then the second one. This is very, very important, the delta time thing.
Yeah, that's what they called it, the delta T antenna, and it was a octahedron basically. And
Yep.
the chair was in the center of that.
And eventually, Paul,
100 kilowatt. 100 kilowatt.
Yeah, I actually know about that. It's 100,000 watt amplifier with white noise. White noise was a big part of what they were doing. Yeah.
Okay, we start into the text. There's another major point of interest concerning the FRR24 receiver.
And Chip, I'll just jump in again. Sorry. The reason why I put this page up was this FRR24 receiver. What Paul said about the delta time antenna is true, but later they actually built the delta time into the receiver, into this FRR24 receiver. So that's really important. And I found a 950-page manual for this receiver. And when I sent it John Hutchison, he was the happiest man on the planet to get it.
Wow.
So that's kind of cool. And yeah,
Very cool.
Yeah, watching John Hutchinson smile is interesting. It's fun.
he was really happy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is another major point of interest concerning the the FRR-24 receiver. When I purchased them from Reinhardt, I noticed that the aluminum housing was corroded on the outside. Aluminum itself does not corrode, but when it does, but it does when it's mixed with impurities. The aluminum panel in the chassis, however, had no such corrosion. Chassis were therefore made out of very pure aluminum. Commercial grade aluminum used in radio equipment is usually not that pure. What does all this tell us? There had to be a reason that the aluminum was so pure. So recently, it has come to the surface in conventional scientific circles that aluminum can be made into a superconductor. A friend of mine at NASA, this is underlined section for emphasis, has told me that mixing mercury with aluminum and alcohol makes microchannels big enough for electrons to channel through the aluminum. This essentially creates a room temperature superconductor.
Very
Quantum tunneling.
important. Yep.
My God, who discovered that? All right, interesting. Reinhardt also warned me about the chassis. He said there might be a little bit of mercury contamination on the chassis. Further inspection has revealed that the chassis had some sort of mercury treatment process. It is currently my belief that the treatment process is related to the silver resonators, which are the capacitors and coils. The mercury and aluminum create microfine channels along the superconducting chassis, and the channels become a multi-dimensional resonator. Lloyd Sweet. To conclude, this receiver is actually a multi-dimensional space-time resonator and would be part and parcel of any time machine that was used for the Philadelphia experiment or at Montauk.
And before we start reading here, Chip, one other thing I will say about that FRR-24 is it's got 6 channels. So 3 channels are used in space-time to figure out where we are, essentially, right? And then the other 3 channels are actually used in time-space to figure out the coordinates of time, because there's 3 dimensions of time. So they had to figure out and keep track of where things are, and that's how they did it with 6 channels, essentially. So it's kind of important.
So it was actually a receiver, Eddie? It's got 6-channel receiver?
Yeah, I think it was both a receiver and a transmitter.
Okay.
I think. I have that manual, Paul, and I'll find it and send it to you as well. I have not really looked into it very much because I usually need to print things out to be able to read them. And it's 950 pages, right? So, but I think I will print it at some point because it's really important. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Okay, we're at Appendix E in the book, History of the Philadelphia Experiment and its reconciliation with the Montauk Project. In 1912, a mathematician named David Hilbert developed several different methods of new math. One of these was known as Hilbert space. With this, he developed equations for multiple realities and multiple spaces. He met Dr. John von Neumann in 1926 and shared this information. Von Neumann took a lot of the systems he learned from Hilbert and ran with it. According to Einstein, underlined, von Neumann was the most brilliant of mathematicians. He had an uncanny ability to take abstract theoretical concepts in math and apply them to physical situations. Von Neumann developed all kinds of new systems in math. Dr. Levinson had come along and developed the Levinson time equations. He published 3 books, which are now very obscure and almost impossible to find. An associate of mine dug up 2 of them at Princeton's Institute for Advanced Study. All of this work was to serve as a background for the Invisibility Project, which would apply the theoretical principles to a large, hard object. Serious research into the subject of invisibility began, going to the next page, began an interest in the early 1930s.
Ernest.
Yeah, in earnest in the early 1930s at the University of Chicago.
And look whose name is right here. This is not the same John Hutchison that we know.
Yeah. So that's the time frame, early 30s. Okay, good. Dr. John Hutchison Sr. served as dean at this particular time, was privy to the work of Dr. Kurtenauer, an Austrian physicist then at the university. They were later joined by Nikola Tesla. Together, they studied the nature of relativity and invisibility. 1933, the Institute for Advanced Study was formed at Princeton University. This included Albert Einstein and John von Neumann. Von Neumann, a brilliant mathematician and scientist, the Invisibility Project was transferred to Princeton shortly thereafter. Interesting. Next section underlined for emphasis. In 1936, the project was expanded and Tesla was made the director of the group. With Tesla on board, partial invisibility was achieved before the end of the year. Research went on to 1940 when a full test was done in the Brooklyn Naval Yard. It was a small test with no one on board the vehicle. The ship used was powered by generators from other ships connected by cables. Another scientist, T. Townsend Brown, became involved at this point.
Mm-hmm.
This is the A team here.
Yeah.
He was known for his practical ability to apply theoretical physics. Brown had a background in gravity and magnetic mines. He had developed a countermeasures to the mines with a technique known as degaussing. This would trip the mines at a safe distance. There was a big brain drain in Europe in the 1930s. Many Jewish and Nazi scientists were smuggled into the country. Much of this influx was attributed to Dr. A. Duncan Cameron Sr., although we know he had extensive connections. His exact relationship to intelligence circles is still a mystery. Underline, next paragraph. By 1941, Tesla had full confidence of the powers that be.
Was that Duncan's dad?
I think so. And I wondered about that when we just read that because I forgot about this. Yeah. I think it might have been, right? Duncan's
Senior,
dad. Yeah.
Jesus.
Wow.
Comes to the powers that be, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. All right, a ship was procured on his behalf, and he had coils wrapped around the entire ship. His famous Tesla coils were also employed on the ship. I did not know that. However, he grew, going on to the next paragraph, next page. However, he grew wary because of the project. As the project developed, he knew there would be problems with personnel. Perhaps he knew this due to the ability to fully visualize his inventions in his mind. In any case, Tesla knew that the mental state and the bodies of the crew would be affected severely. He wanted more time to perfect the experiment.
I do know a bit about that. It was the phasing of the generators that wasn't absolutely perfect that caused the problem. So the people came back at the wrong time, essentially. And that's why they ended up in the ship. The phasing or the timing of everything was wrong, and that's what Tesla really had problems with. Yeah.
According to Dan Winter, he was using the wrong frequencies. All right. Von Neumann disagreed with this vehemently at the time, and the two never got along. No shit. Von Neumann was a brilliant scientist, but did not embrace metaphysics for its own sake. Mistake. Metaphysics was old hat to Tesla, and he had built a successful legacy of inventions based upon his unique prescience.
Prescience, I think it is.
Yep.
See,
that is a cool paragraph.
Yeah.
Going on.
No kidding, right?
Part of what made his views so controversial was that during his experiments in Colorado Springs circa 1900, he said that off-planet intelligence had contacted him via consistent signal messages when Mars approached. This also occurred in 1926 when he had radio towers erected in the Waldorf Astoria at his New York City lab. He claimed to receive information that he'd lose people if things were not changed. He
Mhm.
needed time to design new equipment.
This is
My
awesome.
God,
Yeah.
it is. Tesla's requests for more time were not heeded. The government had a war to win, and additional time was not granted. This is all underlined for emphasis. Tesla went through the motions, but secretly sabotaged the operation in March of 1942. Excuse me. He was either fired or quit.
Wow.
He is supposed to have died in 1943, but there is arguable evidence to suggest that he was whisked off to England. A look-alike derelict is supposed to have been put in his place for the funeral.
Wow.
He was cremated the day after his body was found, which is not in keeping with the tradition of his family's Orthodox faith. Whether or not he died is controversial. The secret papers were removed from his safe by what, John Trump?
Yeah.
And has
Yeah.
never been in question.
Donald Trump's uncle took the
Yeah.
papers. Yeah. Correct.
Von Neumann was named director of the project. Going on to the next page, Von Neumann was named the director of the project. He did a study and determined the 2 huge generators would be required for the experiment. That 2 huge generators would be required. This must be the 100 kW.
No. That was a amplifier.
Those are the
So
transformers. Yeah.
this,
Okay.
yeah,
So
this
these are
is,
separate.
yeah, this
Yeah.
is different.
All right. The keel for the USS Eldridge was laid in July of 1942. Tests were done at dry dock. Then in late 42, von Neumann decided that the experiment would be fatal to people, just as Tesla had suggested.
Mhm.
Ironically, he still got upset at the mention of Tesla's name. He decided the third generator would do the trick. He had time to build one, but never got the third one to synchronize with the other 2. It never worked because the gearbox was incompatible. The experiment went out of control, and a Navy technician was zapped, went comatose for 4 months, and left the project. They pulled out the third generator. Von Neumann wasn't satisfied, but his superiors weren't going to wait any longer. On July 20th, 1943, they decided it was ready and made tests. Duncan Cameron Jr. and his brother Edward were in the control room to operate it. The ship was no longer at anchor, and orders came by radio to turn it on. 15 minutes of invisibility ensued. There were immediate problems with people. They got sick, some experienced nausea. There were also mental illness and psychological disorientation. They needed more time, but the final deadline was given for August 12th of 1943. The orders came from the chief of naval operations, and he said it was only concerned with the war. Trying to avoid damage to individuals involved, von Neumann tried to modify the equipment so that only radar invisibility would be achieved, not literal sight invisibility. He did not understand what was going on.
Yeah.
My God. He should have known that would have not done a damn thing. Sorry for the commentary, but literal sight invisibility. 6 days before the final test on the Eldridge, 3 UFOs appeared over the ship. Okay, this is getting interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The switch was thrown for the final test on August 12th in 1943. 2 of the UFOs left the area. One was sucked up into hyperspace and ended up in the underground facility at Montauk.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Good Lord. Reports from Duncan indicated that he and his brother knew things were going to go wrong with the August 12th experiment. However, for 3 to 6 minutes, things looked good. It appeared it might work without any devastating effects. They could see the outline of the ship. It hadn't disappeared. Suddenly, it was a blue flash and everything was gone. There were problems. The principal radio mast and the transmitter were broken. People were jammed in the bulkheads. Others were walking around in an insane state. Duncan and Edward Cameron did not suffer the same trauma as their shipmates. They had been shielded in the generator room, which was surrounded by steel bulkheads. Why would aluminum might have shielded it, but not steel. The
I
steel
think
acted as a shield to the RF energy. Okay, so that's
it
where
does.
Hutchinson.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, that's where Hutchinson's effect comes in. All right. As they witnessed things falling apart, they tried to shut off the generator and transceivers, but were unsuccessful. At the same time, in quotes, another experiment was going on 40 years later at Montauk. Research had revealed that the Earth, like humans, has a biorhythm. These biorhythms peak out every 20 years on August 12th. This coincided with 1983 and provided additional function for the connecting links through the Earth's field for the Eldridge to be pulled into hyperspace.
Now, hyperspace is probably time space, like we were talking about last week. Actually, that was something that Paul Harris brought up. Zero time. I think that's the same as hyperspace.
Very good question. Yeah, I'm not sure. Higher dimensional space. All right. The Cameron brothers could not turn off the equipment on the Eldridge because it was all linked through time to the generator at Montauk. They figured it wasn't safe to remain on the ship and decided the best alternative would be to jump overboard in hopes of escaping the electromagnetic field of the ship. They jumped and found themselves pulled through a time tunnel and onto dry ground at Montauk on August 12th, 83 at night. They were found quickly and taken downstairs.
Wow, right?
So sorry guys, I missed something here. They just jumped 40 years? What happened?
They jumped off the ship to get away from the experiment
Yes.
and literally fell through into 40 years into the future. Yes, at
Yes,
Montauk. So yes.
Up against the
It's-
chain fence.
Apparently, yeah.
Now,
Apparently,
I'm
that's a
confused. I
20
thought Al Bielek was one of the ones in the wheelhouse, and that Edward was the one that died. Wasn't there a brother that was?
I think it talks about it as we go along here, Charles.
Okay.
Actually, yeah.
Yeah.
And what were you going to say, Paul?
That's a 20-year skip, like from that 1983. There's 20 years where you can go to the zero time point and then skip and come out in that 20-year later cycle.
Yeah, so they would have been able to go from 43 to 63 to 83.
63,
And
yeah.
then again
Yeah.
in 2003 and
Yeah.
Based on the human residence of the planet, etc. I think there's a lot of overprint, involved here. Okay, very interesting. Von Neumann met Duncan and Edward and indicated he knew they were coming. He was now an old man.
Yeah.
We've been expecting you.
That's what he
What took you
said.
so long? All right, next page. He said that there had been a lockup in hyperspace and that he'd been waiting since 1943 for this date. He told the time travelers that the technicians at Montauk were unable to shut things down. Duncan and Edward were required to go back to 1943 and shut the generator off. Von Neumann even told them the historical record showed that they had turned it off, but they hadn't done it yet. He told them to destroy any equipment, and if that's what it took. All right, next paragraph. Before returning to 1943 for good, Duncan and Edward did some missions for the Montauk group. They made a number of trips back to 1943. On one of these trips, Duncan passed through the time portal and entered the time tunnel. Duncan somehow entered a side tunnel and got caught there. Side tunnels were a mystery and remain so. Even though the Montauk scientists theoretically considered side tunnels non-existent, Duncan was warned not to enter them if they should appear. Edward soon ended up in the same tunnel with Duncan. A group of aliens revealed themselves. Apparently, the side tunnel was an artificial reality created by the Greys at this point, I'm sure, by the aliens.
Yeah.
They wanted a piece of equipment before they would let their captives go. This equipment was a very sensitive instrument that charged the crystal drive to the UFO that was underground at Montauk.
And wow.
Alien, yeah. The aliens didn't seem to mind leaving the ship, but they were very intent on keeping the drive source a mystery to humans. Okay, Duncan and Edward returned to Montauk and retrieved the drive for the aliens. Eventually, they were able to return to the Eldridge and carry out von Neumann's orders. They smashed the generators, transmitters, and cut every cable they could find. The ship finally returned to its original point at the Philadelphia Naval Yard. Before the portal closed, Duncan returned to Montauk in 1983.
Mm-hmm.
His brother Edward remained in 1943. Going to the next page. Duncan is not sure why he returned. It has been suggested that he may have been under orders or programmed to do so. This adventure turned out to be a disaster for Duncan. His time references totally dissolved and he lost his link to the timeline. When time references are lost, one of three things happens. Aging slows down, remains the same, or speeds up. In this case, of course, it speeded up. Just lack of resonance. Duncan began to age rapidly. After a short amount of time, he began to die of extreme old age.
He had to be reborn.
Yeah. Yeah, the Knights Templar with the chalice. He chose poorly. We're not sure how this happened, and going on in the next paragraph, but we believe von Neumann transferred him to another time. Scientists were enlisted to help him. They couldn't let the Duncan from 1943 die. He was not only invaluable to the project, he was elaborately involved with the entire scope of time. Oh, yeah, his death could have created bizarre paradoxes and had to be avoided. Unfortunately, Duncan's body was dying, and there was nothing that could be done to alter the rapid aging, but there was another alternative. Research had already demonstrated that each human being has their own unique electromagnetic identity.
Mm-hmm.
This was commonly referred to as one's electromagnetic signature, or just signature. If the signature could be preserved when Duncan's body ceased to function, it could theoretically be transferred to a new body.
Wow.
My God, these guys were on the bleeding edge everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
The Montauk scientists were already intensely familiar with all of Duncan's electromagnetic manifestations from the exhaustive research that had been done. By some means, I'm not sure how, his soul or signature was transferred to a new body.
Mm.
Next paragraph. They sought to help from one of their most loyal and effective agents, A. Duncan Cameron Sr., who happened to be the father of Duncan and Edward Cameron.
There it is.
It's always a bloodline thing. Duncan Sr. was a mysterious character. Going on to the next page. He was married 5 times over the course of his life. He had numerous connections and didn't seem to work. He spent his time building sailboats and traveling to Europe. Some have alleged that he smuggled Nazi and German scientists in the U.S. via his boating activities. There's practically only one tangible piece of evidence that connects him to intelligence circles. He appeared in a photo of a special graduation for intelligence personnel at the Coast Guard Academy. He was not officially affiliated with the Coast Guard in any way. Excuse me. Next paragraph. Through the use of the Montauk time techniques, the Montauk group contacted Duncan Sr. in 1947. They informed him of the situation and told him to get busy and have another son. He now had a different wife than Duncan Jr.'s original mother. This is a soap opera. Duncan Sr. cooperated and a child was born, but it was a girl. His directions were to produce a son. Finally, a boy was born in 1951.
Was it just a girl?
That's funny.
Zyka on this morning.
She's not. Oh my God.
Duncan was chosen as the name for this child, and this is the same Duncan I know today. Okay. Montauk techniques were obviously remarkable, but they were not sophisticated enough to move Duncan from 83 straight back to 1951. There could have been other factors involved, but it appears that scientists had to rely on and use 20-year biorhythms of the Earth We talked about that. As
Mhm.
Duncan's original body was dying, he was transferred to 1963 and installed into the new body provided by Duncan Sr. and his wife. Duncan Jr. has no memories prior to 1963. It's also obvious that whoever occupied his body between 51 and 63 was forced out.
Mm.
I have often heard accounts of a secret project that was run by ITT, International Telephone and Telegraph, in Brentwood, Long Island in 1963. It is entirely possible that transferring Duncan to a new body was the focal point or very important part of this project.
Wow.
Going on, whatever the circumstances, this project would certainly have been trying to somehow utilize the Earth's biorhythm that occurs every 20 years. Edward Cameron had returned in 1943. Duncan was in 1963. After the August 43 experiment, the Navy brass didn't know what to do. 4 days worth of meetings ensued with no conclusions. They decided to do one more test. In late October of 1943, the Eldridge disembarked for the final experiment. No personnel were to remain on board. The crew boarded another vessel and controlled the equipment on the Eldridge remotely. The ship was invisible for about 15 or 20 minutes. When they boarded it, some of the equipment was missing. 2 transmitters and a generator were gone. The control room was a burnt shambles. The zero-time reference generator was left intact. It was put into secret storage.
Read that little note that I got on the side there. Can you go over to that?
To the right, yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. James Schwartz has this 0-point reference generator now.
Yeah, we talked about it. He was a friend of Paul Violet's, and yeah. It's made of tube. It's tube electronic as well. That's why I know about it.
God, that's critical. It's a good reference for 3D time. That's the Jesus piece in this whole configuration, I suspect. All right. Why didn't the aliens take it, though? It was put into secret storage. All right. The Navy washed their hands of the entire operation and officially launched the USS Eldridge with its Office of Record. The ship was eventually sold to the Greek Navy, who later uncovered the logbooks and found that everything before January of 44 had been omitted from the records. Here we go. Here's Mr. Al. According to Al Bielek's account, Edward Cameron continued his career in the Navy. He had top-level security clearance and probed into many sensitive areas such as free energy vehicles and devices. He was outspoken and complained about improper procedures.
Mm-hmm.
For whatever reason, he was brainwashed to forget the Philadelphia experiment and anything else to do with secret technology. Alice stated that age regression techniques were used to put Edward Cameron into a new body in the Bielek family. The Bielek family was chosen as there was only one child in the family, and that baby had died by the time, going on to the next page, the baby had died by the time of his first birthday. Edward was substituted, and the parents were brainwashed accordingly. Edward has since been known as Al Bielek. Underlined for emphasis, age regression techniques have been traced back to Tesla. When he was working on the original Philadelphia experiment, he had developed a device to help sailors in the event that they lost their time logs. The purpose of this device was to reestablish an individual with his normal time locks in the event he had been disoriented from time travel. The government or someone allegedly used this test device and developed it for physical time regression. Jesus, weaponized. Tesla said that if the time locks of an individual are moved ahead in time, one could actually remove age. If one's time locks were pushed 20 years younger, the body would be referenced to those time locks. I did not know Tesla ever talked about this. This is fascinating.
Oh yeah, no, he's the man. Always, right?
God almighty. Edward Cameron now became Al Bielek. Al grew up with his own identity and education, became an engineer. Eventually, he ended up working at Montauk. It was not until the mid 80s that Al began to get memories from his earlier identity. To this day, he continues to doggedly research the Philadelphia experiment and is planning to write another book. He intends to prove, even to the most skeptical, that the Philadelphia experiment did indeed happen.
Okay, so this is a great time to maybe jump in. We won't read that quite yet. Let's have maybe Paul Harris talk first and then Moray King, because you guys both knew Al Bielek. It was mind-blowing.
Yeah, well, I didn't know him too well. I met him at a talk he did that was near my house, and he for a while he went on the circuit and he was kind of telling his stories, and this all brings back crazy memories because it's such a long time ago that I read that book or all those books, the Philadelphia Experiment.
Hmm.
But for whatever reason, I really resonated with it, and I have friends in New York that knew Duncan and also Preston Nichols. So and have some of
Hmm.
their amplifiers that they had built and stuff like that.
You
So
do? Wow.
yeah.
Oh,
And
cool.
so I wanted to go out there to do a tour, and I said to Roger one day, I was like, "Hey, why don't we go and take a tour out to Montauk?" So we did. We rented this bus that was like one of Ken Casey's '60s painted up school buses.
Oh, cool.
It was totally bizarre, and it was all decked out with beanbag chairs and all this stuff. So we drove around and we put it out there, and we ended up getting Duncan Cameron to come with us, and we drove around and picked up all these people and actually did a tour out to the Montauk, and yeah,
Wow.
it was just quite a trip. All the people that ended up showing up, it's all very surreal, and the things that happened on that trip were pretty wild. Yeah.
Wow.
We actually took them out there and did a whole tour around. Strange people showed up, people in white vans. One of the really funny stories was we're walking around the base, and this white van, at this point, part of the group had gone ahead and they were moving, and it was just Duncan and I that were walking along. And these guys pull up, and it's a couple, a younger couple in this totally white van. They roll down the window and they say, "Hey, we're just tourists, and we're out here driving around. And is this what's going on here? Is this some kind of old military base or something?" And we're like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And then they looked straight at us and they're like, "Did you guys used to work here or something like
What?
that?" And I
Oh
was
my
like,
God.
it was,
And you guys, so you
yeah.
included, you could be part of all this in more of a way than even know.
There is some very strange connections that I had as a child to these kind of things. So
Wow.
that's why I wanted to go out there to kind of resolve that and experience it. And yeah, it was a pretty intense experience for sure.
You could have been part of the project even.
He
Yeah,
needs to talk to Rebecca Rose.
Yeah, exactly. You need to meet my friend Rebecca. I actually asked her to jump in with us today, but she's busy. So
yeah, yeah,
wow,
there you go. Yeah.
Okay.
wow. And so Moray, you also knew Al Bielak. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that before we
Yeah.
go
Now,
on.
so I didn't know him well. I remember the psychotronics conference where I met Preston. More than one, they'd speak for a couple of years. Now, so this was after it's all over, so they don't have any bizarre technology. Although he's promoting this wave thing that if you stand in front of it, you're supposed to get trigger insights and everything else. So that was what Preston was promoting at the Psychotronics conference. But he
Okay.
did tell the story of a Montauk. It sounded like a ghost story because he mentioned a Bigfoot character
Uh,
teleporting in.
mhm.
And I remember that. And
It's in the book, actually. Yeah, he talks about it.
Okay, and
Yep.
so he told the story. It was a fun talk because he told it well. It was like somebody around a campfire telling a ghost story. So it was, yeah, it really had the audience intrigued. So that was my memory of Preston. I declined to stand and do his machine for whatever. I didn't care to get exposed to all that. And then, but what intrigued me about Mike's Al Bielek, I didn't really interact with him. I was invited to participate in showing him the movie. I think, did I tell you guys this probably a month ago? Philadelphia Experiment 2. They just it came out
Yes.
on video recently. They grabbed the fresh copy just as it came out, and they wanted to show Al Bielek right there in the hotel room. uh, they were going to play it to let him see this movie for the first time. So they
Hmm.
invited me up, and I can't remember what conference it was because they all kind of mush into my memory. But the time frame is when that second movie came out, the Philadelphia Experiment. And by the
Hmm.
way, my only research that I kind of did was reading Berlitz's book, which
Oh, yeah.
intrigued me.
Yep.
Yeah, because now he made it left it. Wow, this may have really happened, right? Because I've heard the story, and I said I'm rolling my eyes. This has to be like fictional. And then as the little bits and pieces come out, we're monkeying around with time travel type technology and all this other, which may really go hand in hand with UFO technology in general when it has
Mm.
hyperspace capability, when they disappear here and then
Yep.
warp out. And now you're into timelines. So it's not just across hyperspace, it's across time as well.
Hmm.
And so we're on the front end of trying these experiments when we don't really have control or know what we're doing. So it's possible that's what I was left with. It's possible that this can happen. But what I shared before, and I'll repeat it again, is what intrigued me wasn't so much the albilic thing. It was the other person in the room who I didn't know. I didn't even get his name, and he was talking about things. And it was rather bizarre because it was technical things related to this technology, and my thought was, well, how do you know this? Why aren't you like a speaker at a conference, right?
Yeah.
You're talking, and it was kind of like uh, in a daze or something. And
Mm.
what the insight I had was, oh, this is a walk-in phenomenon. A walk-in was like somebody, and they said this about Al Bielek. Oh, somebody says, I'm willing to let some other entity enter my mind and body and let them experience me. And I don't know if the person willing to do this sticks around and goes, it's just another bizarre story like that. But that pattern, which is more of a consciousness thing, intrigued me, and I've read other things not related to technology, but the phenomena of a walk-in spirit possession,
Hmm.
souls, things like that. And so that those ideas actually resonated true to me, that entities can uh, participate and enter and communicate if you, I guess, line up with them well. And because that phenomena was occurring and described quite a bit in other literature, nothing to do with technology. That's what occurred to me. This guy knows too much because an entity is popped into him, and that was the source of the knowledge.
And
And then I can say, well, I can generalize that idea into what Al Bielek is experiencing, Duncan is experiencing, perhaps Preston himself. I don't know. And then these possibilities opened up that we're getting these stories, whether they're true or not. I just listen and weigh probabilities, but I'm not ready to just jump on board and say, well, if somebody channels information, it's absolutely true. In fact, my colleague and I, Dave Faust, we had a poster that we really liked, and it says, just because they're dead doesn't mean they're smart.
That's funny.
And so,
And
so we said, okay, just don't buy everything you hear because it gets so bizarre, like the story
yeah,
you just read. I mean, that's incredibly bizarre. It's better than science fiction, right? Because
yeah,
the way the ideas are coming in with all this
James
technical support around it. Anyway,
Sometimes said James Gilliland of ESETI Ranch in Washington State, Mount Adams. He says from time to time, just because you're dead doesn't mean you're enlightened.
yeah. So Moray, this is in the book, it's on page 105. There's actual pictures of that Bigfoot character that you're talking about from the Montauk Project. And then the other thing I wanted to show everyone is the book that you were talking about from Charles Berlitz.
Berlitz,
Yeah, on the Philadelphia experiment. Now, there was a movie, but the movie that I saw was before that movie was done, and that's the one where my father took me and showed me, probably because of NORAD, the real Philadelphia experiment, and I had conversations with Peter Moon about it. That's actually how Peter Moon and I kind of got together, was talking about that stuff. So now, and it's amazing that both you guys have a connection to all this, and my friend Rebecca also. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get this is something that I got from Chris Beskar, and it's Ken Shoulder's work, and it's EVOs and teleportation, basically. So we'll just read through this one paper, and then we can comment some more about stuff. Does Chip want to read again, or I can?
I could read if you like. What do you want?
Okay.
You want to read,
Yeah,
Chip?
yeah, whatever.
Okay, so here we go with this one. So it's teleportation using EVOs by Ken Shoulders, 2007. Definition: the use of the word teleportation has no intention of invoking anomalous phenomena, when just plain experimental physics will do a better job of explaining the events measured. Neither does the author intend to invoke one of the standard dictionary descriptions as the movement of objects or elementary particles from one place to another, more or less instantaneously, without traveling through space. The method to be discussed here uses both time and space in a very normal way. The description of the method used in this writing will also be done without the notions becoming entangled in the usual quantum physics entanglement world. The method being described is straightforward transportation using the ability of EVOs to effectively encapsulate nucleons into their structure and transport them through physical barriers by a gross reduction of the overall expressed charge. Scope of this writing. Although this basic transport process has been known and used by the author for many years, by very selective loading of specific nucleons into EVOs and projecting them controllably, the only proof of materials transported other than electrons comprising the EVO itself are isolated nucleons. Nucleons is protons or neutrons.
Mm-hmm.
The efficiency of the process is approximately 1 nucleon per femtojoule of input power. No examples of higher order materials or molecular structures have been verified, and the isolated nucleon work is not published. The main purpose of this writing is to introduce the large-scale work done by Urustukov, I can't pronounce that, L-L-L-I,
Mm-hmm.
and Likusonov V.I. of Recon RRC, Kurchatov Institute, Moscow. I can't pronounce that word there.
Mm-hmm.
anyway, telephone number, blah, 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 fax, email, and that name there, that one now, I'll leave it. I'm trying to pronounce that one. Kurchatov Institute, Moscow, blah, blah, blah. The title of their paper is Observation of Transformation of Chemical Elements During Electric Discharge. Their paper can be downloaded from this web address, PDF.
I have to try that.
By such an introduction, those interested in this form of teleportation can become aware of the larger scale of the process instead of only small scale work of shoulders, which operates at a single EVO level for greater clarity in understanding the processes involved. Brief description of Russian work. A capacitor having several thousand joules of stored energy was discharged into a foil of metal, typically titanium, immersed in water, contained in a vessel with a polyethylene cover. The ensuing discharge was found to produce transmuted products in the water that could be analyzed by conventional methods. In addition, a plasma-like ball of light was seen to arise from an insulated top of the vessel that persisted for long after the discharge current subsided. This ball of light is likened to a ball lightning by the authors of the paper.
Cool.
A special analysis was made of the light coming from the ball, and it revealed that the constituents within produced approximately the same transmuted species that were found in the water withdrawn from within the vessel and tested by various means. The simple explanation that the water somehow leaked out of the dielectric cover and became ionized was discarded due to the many tests made. After a period of time, as revealed by the fast framing camera, the ball was sometimes seen to break down into a shower-like explosion. Interpretation by shoulders. Having experienced this basic process of nuclear entrainment in EVOs, the witnessed them being transported to unlikely places, it is not hard to see how the process described by the Russian authors is a very real example of teleportation of matter through the cover of the experiment.
Mm-hmm.
The apparatus used by them was not intended to produce such effects. Hence, it was not optimized for teleportation, but it does show the possibility of operating the process at a moderately large size. This is a commendable accomplishment that should be encouraged, as further work is likely to lead to a configuration capable of great utility.
Yeah, so that's interesting. The thing that I understand about teleportation is going back to the Turing wave. If you can alter the Turing wave or the phasing of things, now you've got something going on. And I think the white EVO to black EVO and this cycle in between that Ken Shoulders has talked about and some of the other things that we've already done in the group here probably applies to a lot of the stuff, as matter of fact. So going back to both you guys, what do you guys think about this? Because, I mean, you both knew Al Bielek and you knew Preston Nichols as well, right, Moray?
Morris, he may not be. Oh, he may.
Yeah, I'm right here. Yeah, well, I told my story about Preston. Yeah,
What you
I
might be oh, sorry. Keep
Yeah,
go
go
going.
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead.
My answer was just yes. I knew Preston, and I told the little story.
What
Yeah.
you'd be interested about Preston, Eddie, is that what he had at that conference and what he worked on was he called a mind amplifier, and he
Oh,
could play
wow.
music that was recorded like through the sound system, and you would experience the emotions of the people who recorded the music.
Oh, wow.
He was able to access the feelings that were actually being. So let's say you put on Sergeant Pepper's and you listen to it, and you would be feeling what the musicians felt as they played it. It was that an intensive an experience.
Wow. And that was a special amplifier.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
know much more about it? Do you know how it
I know
worked
where
or?
it is. Yeah, I know who has it, and yeah, we've been talking about recreating it. So I'll
That's
have to
deep.
get, yeah, Alan, my friend Alan Rhodes has it, and I think we'll get him on here because he could fill in a lot of these pieces of the stories.
That
But
would be
now
So, so,
awesome.
going,
so has Preston passed away?
yeah,
Preston Nichols.
yeah,
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
and
When he died,
Cameron likewise.
yeah, Duncan passed away shortly after we did that tour. I actually lent him a
Wow.
Therify to help him out in the end days, and
No
yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
But going to the EVOs now, Ken Shoulders was able to go through like ceramics, like alumina and stuff like that, and shoot EVOs straight through them, and somehow they managed to tunnel through and come out the other side, even lengthwise on a big plate. Uh, so the Russians have carried those experiments a lot farther, and they've been able to teleport the materials by sweeping them up, if you look at it that way, into the nucleons and get captured inside of the EVO, and can travel down a fiber optic line
Oh,
and
wow.
manifest on the other side as a metal. So they put, I think, titanium through, and using those techniques and it's all relates to the ball lightning, of course, which relates to
Yeah.
the
Plasmoids.
and all that.
So
And then,
they're actually using the EVO to transport it down a fiber
yeah,
optic line, is what you said.
yeah, and then
Wow.
it'll re-manifest on the other side. Yeah,
Wow. That is insane. And that amplifier, wow. That's,
yeah,
that's awesome. Let's build one.
yeah. So I've done a lot of work with all that kind of stuff over the years, and recently at our last conference with Bob Grenier, we did a replication of Matsumoto's, basically essentially the same experiment. And
Mhm.
looking at transmutations of copper, we used lead and copper, and put basically an electrolyte water solution in a petri dish, and then putting a high pulse discharge from a lead anode onto this copper plate kind of thing,
Yeah.
and then looking at it under the SEM and seeing the transmutations, and you can see the impact marks of the EVOs and everything in there.
So the SEM, I know that Bob's got one. Were you there with him or do you have
Yeah,
one or?
yeah. Well, no, there's one that's been floating around, and Bob's been paying towards renting it, with the idea that eventually we could buy it. And Jan Rack is supposed to be purchasing it. We're going to put it at his lab in outside of Prague and have full time access to it. But
Wow, wicked
yeah,
cool.
unfortunately when they brought it, they brought the technician and everything with it, and it was supposed to stay at the lab, and they ended up wrapping it up and taking it back because it hadn't been fully paid for yet. But we didn't get a chance to complete the scans. We got the first layers scan. We showed the transmutations, and we showed all kinds of tracks, and we showed what they look like, these Oreo cookies of matter that get embedded inside of the thing. So we actually did a video with Bob where we were talking about how these things get embedded into the metal plates. All this all relates, right? From
Like
the
Hutchison's knife.
Philadelphia experiments, yeah, where the people were embedded in the halls, to Hutchison stuff where his metals are mixing. You can see these fragments that are just embedded in, and you look at the elements that they're made out of, and they're different elements than what were in the experiment. There's no copper, lead. There's a lot of carbon, but all kinds of other things get produced in there too.
Yeah, because there's transmutation going on. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And
this
unusual
relates to
isotopes.
Pavels, yeah, and this, it's been called cold fusion and Leonard and all this, but I think we're starting to get a much bigger picture for it. And this relates to Pavels' paper, where the nucleons, it's the nucleus can split apart into blocks, like his little blocks, and those get recombined in other things. And if you do, there's a fellow artifact who made this calculator to do all the transmutation calculations, and you just put elements in that you start with, and you'll see what you're going to come up with, and it's
Wow.
and it's bang on it, and it fully fits in with how Pavel's nucleons would come apart and then get reassembled, and it happens many times. Things will reform and then unform and then reform during the whole process of the EVO, or in a larger scale, the ball lightning happening. Things just get ripped apart and mixed into soup and then get put back together.
That is amazing. Wow. That is so cool that so you were actually is it Prague where
Yeah.
Wow. That is
Well,
so cool.
what time frame were you?
We call it the Alchemy of Prague, and we usually do it every year in the fall, or every second year we've been doing it. We've done it the last couple of years. Yeah, and then so the first half, I teach courses on practical alchemy, and so we usually do practical hands-on alchemy in the castle or in the basement of where Edward Kelly's tower is, where John Dee and Edward Kelly were in Prague, and where they spent time. And in the basement of Edward Kelly's, I teach a course on practical alchemy there.
No way. Wow.
We do all kinds of stuff like that.
My
So
God.
as part of the advanced alchemy, now that we can explain it scientifically, how transmutations are taking place, we've been calling it the advanced energy system, and we've been doing a second half these last couple of years. And the first year, last year, I think we showed people 5 different ways of doing transmutations in your kitchen. Basically, you use your microwave and modify a few things, and that was 2 years ago, I suppose. And then this year we did 5 or 6 different ways as well, right before everybody's eyes. And the nice thing is we had Matsumoto's, who Matsumoto basically was a nuclear physicist in Japan, and he worked his whole life, and he was always shunned by the rest of the community,
Right.
because
True,
if what he said was true, all their stuff falls apart. So Bob's recreated the book, and he's done another version of it where it's going to have high-res photos, because Matsumoto's family gave him all his work. So he's got, all kinds of film from Matsumoto's experiments. And we reproduced Matsumoto's experiment there at Jan's lab. And Matsumoto's daughter and grandson were there to witness it.
Yeah, right.
So, it was really cool.
That is so cool. And is Bob Green actually writing a book about John Hutchison as well, too?
Yeah, we were talking about that the other day.
That is so cool. Wow.
Yeah, so there'll be something more from what Bob's compiled than George Hathaway's book, which has been the last real.
Yeah. And hopefully, Paul, you and I will get, and maybe the whole group will get together with John and go through some of those papers that are from Electric Spacecraft Journal. There's 2 of them specifically that I want to do with you and him. So in the future, that's something maybe this year we can try and get to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Because John has been in the group before here as well, too, right?
Yeah. Well, hopefully you can come up. We were talking about doing it again, like a second Hutchison effect with more detailed and reproducing some of that stuff, and getting John to come up to the lab. And
so this year, like this summer kind of thing?
I think in the fall, and we might try to shoot. Yeah.
Well, we'll be there. I guarantee I'll be there this time.
Yeah, we've been talking about doing a whole conference and getting a bunch of people together, and we'll rent out a place and then do a bunch of experiments again at my place. So.
That would be awesome. Yeah, Carmen and the whole gang.
Yeah. Yeah,
Because
exactly.
we're all going to meet at Carmen's place at some point in the spring as well, too, with Moray and yourself and just everyone, right? Hopefully
Right.
Brendan will come over, and yeah,
Yeah,
very
it'd be cool.
excited about all
I
this
might
and
be
all
able,
these synchronicities too,
Well,
right?
invite Bob.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, Bob Grenier, absolutely.
If
Yeah.
he has a reason to be here, you could then time it around that he's in the country.
yeah.
By the way, I just sent you, Eddie, just now, I just sent it a link in email to the talk I was just watching last night about Bob Grenier was being interviewed about some very advanced ideas on the ball lightning transmutation
Oh,
stuff.
cool.
And it
Okay.
was very current. So I just emailed it to you so you could fire it out to the rest of the group.
I'll definitely
Just
check it out.
now,
Yeah.
just now. Yeah.
Okay. Very, very cool. Yeah. Yeah. Because you, both you guys know him, right? You met him before too, didn't you,
At the
Maureen?
Tesla conference for the first time, he was, yeah, it was our featured speaker, right? And
Yeah.
so it was quite a thrill to interact with him. He knows so much. He's the brightest guy in the room, right?
And actually, when he came and Carmen picked him up in Vancouver when he came for the replication with Paul, um, he was supposed to join the group and jump into the Zoom call, but the plane was delayed or something, and we didn't wait long enough and whatever, so it didn't happen. But Carmen had arranged all that for Bob to actually be in this group with us talking. So
Yeah,
there's a
well, you
chance
could,
that we could get him in here again too, right?
yeah, just invite him to the group. Let him come
Yeah.
every week.
Because,
If he's,
yeah,
if he
exactly.
likes it.
Because you know him, Pavel knows him, and Paul knows him, right? So, and Carmen.
Right. Well, we had the honor of meeting him because he's active on the speaking circuit.
Yeah, he's doing a wonderful job about everything too. Yeah, when you combine his work with Ken Shoulders and even going back to Wheeler, and Pavel's work, now we have something. Is what I right?
Yeah, well, Bob, that's when I met Bob, I was like, oh, thank you, because I started watching some of his stuff, and then he came to one of my talks online, and I was like, oh, I got to thank you, Bob, for putting all these pieces of the puzzle together. It's kind of like these things move in slow increments, and then there's big jumps, and
Yeah.
Bob's really been able. And part of the big thing is all the cold fusion people, all the academics, and that they've got their blinders on, right? They're focused on their
Yeah.
work. They don't want to look at anybody else's for fear of somebody else saying, "Hey, you got that from me, and now you got the Nobel Prize or whatever." They all want the Nobel Prize, but Bob doesn't care. He's just gone in there and analyzed everybody's work, put all the pieces of the puzzle on the table. And I really think he's put more together than anybody at this point, and gives us enough of an understanding to be able to recreate this stuff.
So I believe he reads the Russian papers. I think the
Yes,
Russians are
Yeah,
most
the
advanced
Russians are
on,
light years ahead of us on all
yeah,
this.
on
they
their
are.
experiments of transmutation. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're willing to consider other models of the nucleus, and so they're not locked up on the paradigm
right.
of the quarks or anything else. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you guys check out Yandex, that is the Russian search engine, which is absolutely fantastic. So Yandex is what it's called. Yeah.
And,
Yeah. YANDEX.
we awarded Osmira the Starburst Nobel Prize for Physics the other week.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
last week.
Yeah, I saw that. That was
The,
great.
Yeah.
So
the
does anybody
yeah,
know if the
SNP
Russians
Oh,
does anybody actually know if the Russians summarized in a paper the work at Montauk or any of the other Philadelphia
oh,
experiment? Did they take a look at that and come up with
that's
or
a good,
allowed to publish that's something that we could read?
that's a good question, Chip.
I haven't seen any cross references to that. There's definitely a lot of RF stuff and all their woodpecker, and you can see the
Yeah.
antennas online, and they've done so much, high voltage experiments. There's the old, there's some big old generators that you can see in the Russian forest that are just trees are growing all around all these old experimental sites now.
And Paul, do you know what the tube is called a GM100? And it's a huge triode, like huge. And guys have built amplifiers out of them, but I'm almost positive that was one of the modulators for the woodpecker.
Right. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, was it a Thyrotron? Because the Thyrotrons,
It,
I've got a few of those, and those things can just dump,
it,
make watts of power.
no, it was a huge triode, power triode.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Triode.
but
Yeah.
like huge, right?
Yeah.
When I asked my tube dealer in Moscow to send one, he said I'm not allowed to send them out of the country. That's what
Yeah.
he said.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
That's funny.
um, yeah. But wow, is that ever cool, you guys? These synchronicities and connections are with this group and other groups like Bob and that are amazing. And Ken Shoulders, of course, with Chris Beskar,
Yeah.
because a lot of this goes back to Ken Shoulders, who Moray knew him. Did you ever meet Ken Shoulders? I
No.
never asked you that before, no. But I think Bob Grenier has, right?
No.
Uh,
No.
No?
Are
Okay.
you asking me?
Yeah, I know
Well,
that
yeah,
you had.
but yeah, I stayed at his place. He stayed at my
Yeah.
place, and
Yeah.
we got
Yeah.
to know him quite well. And he's my hero because he has the fundamental experiments that ground this stuff. Otherwise, we're floating in science fiction territory
Yeah,
and can never come back, right?
yeah, exactly. And Moray also knew Pete Peterson, and this all connects back to Chris Beskar and Stavati Aerospace, right? So it's fantastic, these synchronicities that keep coming up with our groups here, right?
Yeah.
So
Amazing.
did anybody know if von Neumann ever published a summary of the work?
There's
Well,
another great question.
wouldn't it be classified? You'd think that type of
That's
thing.
well,
You
that's
have
why
to,
I was asking. Yeah, he may have done
yeah.
it, but
But
it's
maybe
hidden
we
in
can
the.
find it.
Some
Maybe
people call it
I haven't looked for it yet.
some people
They
call it
kicked
von
Tesla out, right? They kicked Tesla out at kind of halfway through it. Von Neumann takes the project over, has no instinctive understanding of consciousness and metaphysics in general.
Yeah.
He's just flying by the seat of his pants, it would appear, doing some very dangerous tests and melting people through bulkheads and things like that. Did anybody put together a coherent process for this phenomenon to occur? And I'm
Well,
getting down in the weeds
well,
here. I
well,
understand electrogravitics,
I
right? I
do.
understand electrogravitics, and I understand Sal Paez pulsing his with a microwave generator, pulsing his double-hulled Hawk device, and we got a frequency modulation effect here. We're shearing the EMF field to create access to the longitude, to create access to the vacuum field. And once that happens, we now have gravity to manipulate. And if we have gravity manipulate, we now can play with time. But nowhere in that document I just read did anything come out about gravity.
Yeah.
You cannot connect electromagnetically and time vortices without gravity in the middle somewhere.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm asking about von
The-
Neumann and the Russians.
Well, the connection, Chip, is you need to learn about Project Pegasus now, because that's the teleportation project for the U.S. government that my dad's friend was part of, right? So when you learn about this project, they all intermesh essentially, because really Pegasus is another iteration of the Philadelphia experiment, which was, before the Montauk, and then Philadelphia experiment, and then even before that, Project Rainbow #2 and Project Rainbow #1. They found when they were doing a special spot welding technique that used very high current voltages, but these huge capacitors to discharge energy. When they were doing this work, they found that the tools around the area seemed to either disappear completely or would disappear and come back. So that's when they actually started to realize that there was something going on. Probably they were working with Tesla at this point, because he really was the head of the project up until a certain point, essentially, right? So if we learn about Project Pegasus, which we're going to, and there's actually on my YouTube channel, there's a playlist called Teleportation Now, and it has the three interviews with Dr. Sala and Andrew Vasiago. And Andrew Vasiago's father was the chief engineer of this Project Pegasus, the teleportation project for the US government. He time traveled. There's all kinds of cool stuff there. So yeah, it all kind of interconnects, and there is some stuff.
I once heard that von Neumann, I don't know if it's true or not, but I once heard a few places that he was like a one of the best probably the best mathematician in the world. I mean, or at least one of the. He was a physicist as well, but he was very good at mathematics. Some people have said call him the top mathematician in the world or something like that. Anyway, I just thought I'd give you.
Well, we just read that.
Yeah, we just exactly that was in the book. Yeah.
We just read that, but what would that have to do with an empirical test like Montauk, the Eldridge, Philadelphia experiment? They were flying by the seat of their pants.
What I was going to say, Chip, is by 83 or that range, or maybe it was before that, because Rebecca told me a bunch of stuff, right, about Montauk. And the one thing about Montauk that me and Rebecca talked about, how was they lost thousands of people because they didn't have the technology locked in. And by the time Rebecca came along, and maybe I'll have to ask her when it was exactly, they had mastered it essentially by that point, essentially. But before that, they were having all kinds of issues. They were flying by the seat of their pants, like you were saying, essentially, doing all this stuff. Yeah, and it was the Germans in the Nazi secret space program called the Dark Fleet that were actually doing these projects because of Project Paperclip. We lost the war to Hitler. We surrendered. Hitler went to South America and Antarctica, and he had extraterrestrial help in all of this. And then Project Paperclip came along, and they let thousands, if not tens of thousands of scientists in, and they formed NASA. But not only did they do that, they actually, the whole military industrial complex was taken over by the Nazis, essentially.
Sure.
And even Frank Chile had a friend. Can't remember the guy's name right now, but he was flying in the August, I think, of 1945 in the Caribbean, and he was a Navy guy, and he had a bomber, and he saw 3 or 4 super large submarines high in the water. And he radioed back to Pensacola, was naval headquarters, and said, "This is what we got going on. What do you want me to do?" And they said, "What direction were they going?" And he said, "They're going towards South America." And headquarters said, "Leave them alone. Come back."
That was like Operation High Jump, remember?
And then there was Operation High Jump after that. Exactly.
I was just after the Second World War. They went down to
47.
Antarctica expedition because the Nazis are supposed to have had flying discs, you know.
They did, yeah.
It's and also the Nazi bell, which is in, like Paul was saying, it's in the forest growing around at the moment, the experimental site. So
that's Pinamundo, the secret space program. So Carmen's father saw that Nazi flying bell at Pinamundo at the German secret space program.
So when the Americans went down there, Operation High Jump, they got their ass whipped with what's his name?
Admiral Byrd. Admiral Byrd.
Yeah.
Supposed to have got it in on Earth as well.
Yeah.
I think in both poles or one pole. I can't remember if it's both poles or one pole. But he went on an expedition, top decorated soldier in the US Army, in the US Navy, and they got whipped by the UFOs, and had to go. It was a whole. You don't go down there for scientific expedition with warships.
So
anyway,
one thing
to be in a work, whatever, and his son, I think, got the. I mean, I'm not sure how genuine the book is, and then didn't he get pushed out of a window? And they said it was a suicide.
No, that was James Forrestal.
Admiral, what happened?
Yeah, CIA.
He was on radio, and they said he was crazy or something. Is that right?
What was the book? This is familiar. What book was this in? Everything you're saying is familiar.
Admiral, it's gone, Eddie.
Okay, so Dr. Sala has some really awesome stuff on Admiral Byrd and the whole thing. He's really, if you want to really learn about the truth, you need to go and watch his stuff, essentially. I don't know about the book. I don't know what it's called, but I do know that before World War II, the Nazis had 33% of Antarctica. After World War II, they had 40%. And they did have secret bases that were, the submarines would follow a special path in the ice and would end up in this area which was really warm and temperate where they could live, and they had secret bases under there. I even have the map that shows the you turn here and you go this way and you go that way and whatever. I've got that map somewhere.
One of the
So-
oldest, one of the biggest unsolved mysteries in history, conventional history, is where did the Vikings go in Greenland in the Middle Ages? Suddenly they set up shop, they stopped, they set off and left the place abandoned. The archaeologists, from what I understand, to the villages. And if you ask the Inuit people, they'll just say they went to the land, they went to the land beyond the poles.
Inner Earth. They're
Oh,
talking about inner Earth because there's
Yeah, hollow
In
earth
conventional history, one of the biggest unsolved mysteries in conventional history is where did the Vikings go in Greenland? What happened to the Vikings in Greenland? Because they were there, I don't know how long, maybe a century or whatever, and then they just left. And the Inuits,
it was good weather, right, at that time.
yeah.
Right? It
Well,
was green.
yeah, there's supposedly entrances to Inner Earth, and I'll never forget. I've never met Alex Collier or had connection with him, although I do. Miranda, who did my Akashic readings, talked to him on the phone. Alex Collier once said, "Of the 28 billion of us on the planet, only 7 billion live on the
The
surface."
surface.
Do the math. Do the math.
This is a popular planet.
Oh, well, it's crowded down there.
Exactly. Exactly.
Elbow to elbow.
And again, if you want to know what's down there, go to Dr. Sala. He's got all kinds of stuff there. And I think Elena talks a little bit about it as well, but Dr. Sala's got it all.
James Gilliland from East Ranch in Washington State, Mount Adam, where you can see UFOs on demand, on cue. He just takes you out in the field because there's a lot of psychic and paranormal activity around Mount Adams, and he talks a fair bit. You see every week he just goes out and takes with a group of people, a whole group of ufologists or whatever. They take photos of ships coming out of Mount Adams and orbs, and he talks a fair bit about what a Sasquatch around there. The scientists have been trying to find Sasquatch for years, and they can't catch them. They put food out for them. They always take the food, and they can't catch them. He
So if you guys,
he says they're the Sasquatch at the top of the nature being. They're avatars that can teleport or whatever.
so if you want to learn about Sasquatch, listen to Elena's Star Nations number 100. She talks all about the Ryan Wars and how the fifth planet Meldak was destroyed, Sasquatch, how the people, how they moved from Mars to Earth, and the whole 9 yards. Check it out. It's
He
fantastic.
saw a Sasquatch at least 2 or 3 times. He's seen the Sasquatch.
And you're
Well, you've seen
right.
them a
They're
lot.
supposed to be really intelligent.
We
Yeah, the
have them
Kutu.
here. Where
Their
I
species
am
name-
right now. Their
Their species name is the Kutu. And they came from
Okay.
Maldek, went to Mars, and ended up here. Mars got blown up in a big ass war, and so they are very intelligent. They're very spiritual.
Yeah.
They're just kind of furry.
What you said about Mars is when Meldak, the fifth planet, blew up, Mars, the Marianas Trench, I think it is the scar of what happened. And that's also why the atmosphere, or part of the atmosphere, was gone. But let's just say this again, go to that Star Nations 100, because Elena's got an actual picture of what Mars really looks like. And there are blue and green areas and orange and whatever else there. So, finally the truth is out about all of this stuff again, right?
What's the thing? So Moray King. I've got the This is probably the Admiral Byrd book. I think this is the one. I'm not sure if it's the genuine one, but it's Missing Diaries of Admiral Richard E. Byrd. I think that was published by his son.
Yeah, it says Richard Byrd there, so that is his son,
I'm
right?
not sure if that's the
cool.
most genuine one, but it's the one that's.
I'm gonna take a screenshot of that. Got to get that.
I'll get it. I'll get a.
There's a lot of stuff. Even Frank Chile knows a lot about what happened with Admiral Byrd. I don't know if he actually talked to him or not, because Frank knows everyone. That's the one thing about Frank,
Yeah.
right? So it's very cool. Yeah, this, you know what, we might have to, if I get this book, we might have to do a show or two on this as well, because it's really cool stuff, right?
So he's the most decorated soldier or Navy guy in the US Army. So why would he ruin his career by making up a story?
And
Doesn't make
actually, when he came back out of that, when he got his ass kicked, he ended up having one interview in South America, and he told the truth. And I'll see if I can find that. And then after that, when he went to headquarters, that's when they said, okay, you can't talk about this stuff and blah, blah, blah. And then they started to, whitewash it essentially, right? So yeah, it's quite the thing. It's all very real. The Germans did get spacecraft gifted to them, brand new spacecraft by the Draco. I even have a picture somewhere of Draco shaking hands with Hitler.
Yeah.
And I
So
got
that
that
would
from
end,
Dr. Sala.
that would end up explaining how we leapfrogged into this advanced technology without knowing what we're doing.
Yeah.
Because that's way too much knowledge, just the ability to control what you're doing.
Yep.
And so, and I think to answer Chip's question about, well, what's the linkage to just the gravitational propulsion of a UFO? I think it's all continuum, right? You can, when you have the local stuff, you chose not to warp yourself out into hyperspace. You're just working locally, and so you're warping the space-time metric. And then when you want to leave, you just rev it up, and now you have all the wormhole ideas and everything else to hyperspace. But to have advanced technology like that, you have to know what's going on, and we're not even close to knowing. But the one clue is we seem to be able to futz around with the technology just enough to be dangerous. And so it may not be that hard to do. I think it's hard to engineer and get control of it, but to create, yeah. Anyway,
I'll go back to William Tompkins every single time with this one, because when you read and learn about William Tompkins, you'll understand that they did engineer and design all of this stuff. Now, maybe they learned it from extraterrestrials, but it's like Chris Beskar said, because I asked him, I said, and you even asked him, where did this stuff come from? And he said, no, it was our guys. And a lot of the people that were working at Lockheed Skunk Works, who retired at Lockheed Skunk Works, actually now work at Stavati. So there's a clue there as well too, right?
So just to back up and to further Moray's question, nobody has ever documented the phenomenology of Montauk or the Philadelphia experiment from beginning to end, correct? All we're doing is saying we're wrapping Tesla coils around things. We've got a giant ass vacuum tube. Where I need to, like Richard Feynman would do, I need to dig deeper.
Well,
how does it work? We are skirting the issues. How do you open a time portal and keep it stable? The 0-point reference device wasn't mentioned in there, but what the hell is that? Can we do that in this group in the next few months? Can we explain Montauk in a block diagram in the next few months?
Yeah, we can. Because we actually had the block diagram up already, and there's a lot more that I can share about that, because I know a lot.
We got to scratch a lot deeper in it. I'm not comfortable with it.
Okay.
Well, maybe now that all these guys have passed on, it's time somebody does a FOIA request to find out everything about the Montauk base and what's going on there.
Oh, here we have all of it. Here, have it all.
Here you go.
And guess what, Moray? You're the one that lives down in the US of A. Because you're going to get it a lot easier than if Paul or I asked for it.
Right.
So,
I'll say please.
And you knew Al Bilak, right? And
I could drop his name. Oh, I personally, good old Al.
Actually, it'd be a good next book for Paul Shatskin. Paul Shatskin, who wrote about T.T. Brown and Philo Farnsworth.
Oh, wow.
That could be his third book.
I'll tell you a fun little fact. It's tiny, though. I actually got at the end of Townsend Brown's life, I got invited to a project and participate. I wrote a paper, and I got to meet him, Townsend Brown. He's retired and just doing rock electricity and seeing rectification and studying sidereal things. So it was very, very minor. And I remember warning me, don't ask him about the Philadelphia experiment. He really gets upset. Just please don't ask. I said, okay. Obviously you asked him, and he says, yeah. Well, if it's classified stuff, he can't talk about it. He'd be threatened and everything else, so it would be upsetting. I guess it's rude. So
Wow.
anyway, that it looked like, well, that part of the connecting. Well, they dropped Townsend Brown's name in the project.
They did, yeah.
And then maybe he participated in a minor way, but he obviously was not a big player in it. So it's very intriguing. Berlitz was left with that. Wow, this what I dug up. It sounded like science fiction, but I ended up being very intrigued that
Yeah.
something's going on. But your connection to the Dracos, that connects a big dot. It says, how do we leapfrog in such an advanced way?
Mhm.
And then if you get help, right now,
They
now
did.
those guys
Well-
are interfering with the Prime Directive, and we may be able to now copycat and start doing it. But it's like they weren't supposed to give it to us. It's like giving matches to a baby,
That's
right? We don't know.
exactly right.
We don't know what we're doing, and we're playing
Yeah.
around with it, right?
It wasn't just the Draco either. It was the Naboo Greys and the whole
Yeah.
damn Orion. Their whole damn Orion alliance of jackass Greys. There's about a dozen of them.
Yeah.
And so because we were bootstrapped with this technology before we ever spiritually had an option to even understand it, they're gonna give it all to us. 3,000 or 4,000 years of technology is going to be gifted to us. And stand the fuck back, because we're going to have to bootstrap our consciousness and spirituality at a huge rate,
Yeah.
never before seen in this galaxy. That's why there are so many ETs watching what's going on this planet.
Yeah.
They know we can do it.
In
Our
fact,
DNA is absolutely extraordinary. Angelic DNA, we are at the level of the Anunnaki and way beyond.
mhm.
I had somebody tell
because
me
of the
last night on it.
cedars.
Yes, I got told on it, unequivocally by G.W. Harden last night that our DNA was developed at the same time the Anunnaki was. That's part and parcel with Ea, for Christ's sake. And so we can do it. And that's probably the only reason why we'll be the first species to be jump-started 3,000 or 4,000 years in terms of technology, because we can understand the spirituality that's required. The highest form of technology in the universe is consciousness. And
Yeah.
so
And
I just look at all these gaps and the disconnect between the breadcrumbs, and it's absolutely infuriating. And yes, I think in the USAP projects, as Greer would put it, we did figure it out. A lot of it, T. Thompson Brown and these guys did figure out a lot of it on their own, but they had a huge amount of instinct imprinted into them by
Yeah.
the Naboo Greys. They
Yeah.
were getting downloads at 4 o'clock in the morning. Tesla himself admits it, and so. But why can't we explain how to open a time portal and then to traverse it 20 years at a time stably without melting people's arms through the bulkheads and ships?
well, they've
There's-
done it.
there's-
They did it though in Project
Yeah, they did.
Pegasus.
No, I have no doubt of that. But
Yeah.
why hasn't anybody completely, fully documented the thing? And maybe they have. And it's being held back from us because it is not yet time for disclosure. We're that far
Yeah.
away from disclosure.
Yeah. So what you said about us being gifted all these technologies is absolutely true, because Frank Chile has said that the secret space program is 1,500 years ahead of where we are now. And the fact of the matter is that Solar Warden, which was designed by William Tompkins, which was the secret space program, the good secret space program, the technology is all locked up in there and will be released. And that's the 6,000 plus patents plus all the other stuff that's going to come out here in the very near future. There is a massive plan for disclosure, because it was actually handed over from Thorhan, Elena's contact, to General Van Herk, the head of NORAD, on January 7th of 2023.
3 years ago.
Yeah, 6 days later, I was on the radio talking about NORAD and Elena and Stavati and everything, with 1 million people listening worldwide. So that's how it kind of started for me, essentially. But all of this stuff will come out. And Elena has said multiple times now that by 2030, we will have extraterrestrial contact. And I also know that by 2030, we're supposed to have the compact fusion reactor that comes out on Trump's chart. And 2032 is when the hover car comes out from Stavati Aerospace.
Same with aircraft.
So
remember, scientists said for years, heavier than air flight is impossible. Even three years after the Wright brothers had first flown, there were still scientists saying that's a hoax, that heavier than air flight is impossible.
yeah.
Yeah, well, it's only been a little over 100 years, right, Brendan? That's scary. That's fucking scary. You know, and so for us to be able to grasp this technology is critically important. But, you know, again, last night I had a light worker tell the entire group that our mission, our path as a civilization is Christ consciousness. So hold the thought for a second. And then the next question I asked you about G.W. Harden, did Jesus Christ manifest? Did he come to any other planet in this galaxy other than Earth? Did he incarnate anywhere else? The answer was no. And Jesus Christ is known throughout this galaxy by multiple hundreds of civilizations for his consciousness and spirituality.
He was from
That would
Cirrus.
appear to be our path, is consciousness and spirituality, not necessarily the tech. We will get the technology. We will understand it.
The stories that it was in
it's both.
India. It was in India, even Mongolia and Japan, even in UK. In those days, did those feet walk in ancient times? There's stories about, I think Joseph of Arimathea was supposed to have been in the UK. Some stories say he was in the UK. He could have whatever. He could teleport. If he could teleport, he could go anywhere. Whatever. And Mary Magdalene is the main key. It's an equal both, not just the Christ figure. Not the Christ figure in the Bible, the real one that existed.
Yeah, the Da Vinci Code. You know, I happen to believe that story. Dan Brown got it right. So anyway, let's make it our job in the next few months to try to put this together with as few gaps as possible. And yes, we're going to have to spitball because we don't have access to all the experiments, but we have to do that. You know, I'm in many different groups. You are as well. And we're just spinning our wheels in a whole bunch of things. We're not getting anywhere. I hate to say it.
Well, no,
anywhere.
I disagree with you, Chip, because we are getting somewhere. The spirituality and physics combine when we start talking about the etheron.
Well,
and
I
the
understand
etheron is the
You know-
is the chemical bond, and it just keeps going up the scale. So we are learning and releasing.
I understand
it all,
that, but
right?
we can't show that with experiments. And we can't show it with the math either. So, and I am not saying that the academic scientific method that we have used for the last 300 years is the way to do it. I am completely invested in 80% of our physics is catastrophically wrong, and we need to start over. Therefore, the entire method of testing our intuition is also wrong. So where the hell do we start?
Subquantum kinetics. That's why we're in
I
this
agree.
group,
I am.
right?
That's why I'm in this group. I fully believe that. I understand the EVO issue is so systemic to everything we're talking about. It's absolutely critical. But why can't we connect the dots and make these devices work?
So
nobody's making the devices work.
So
I mean, I'm hoping Chris Beskar can.
They are though, and so Chris Beskar has said that the pillar of the future of science, and I have a little clip on my channel about this, the pillar of the future of science is the Ken Shoulders work.
Yeah, no, nobody's arguing on that in this group.
So that's where we need to sort of understand. But if we go back to Stavati Aerospace, I've said in the past that Stavati is like Lockheed Skunk Works on steroids.
Yes,
and the reason why I say that is because all of these technologies that are coming out of the Pius patents weren't developed by Sal Pius. I can guarantee you that. They were developed by Chris and Pete Peterson at Area 51. That's the whole story of how Stavati started. And I'm the person that brought them out. So I'm the person that knows quite a bit about this stuff because I've got over 10 hours of stuff in the Stavati portal on high physics and everything with David Wilcock and Chris Beskar. You guys have only seen like a couple minutes of what I've got.
Paul Navilet thought it was simulation. The key area developed subquantum kinetics was the simulations. You know, so anyway.
That's why Pavel's work. Well, no, that's why
the-
Pavel's work and Brandon's
So,
work needs to be combined, right?
we did that with ChatGPT. We asked it to combine subquantum kinetics with Pavel's work.
That's
So
right. And we never
it
went through it really. Yeah.
So what's the magic? So here was it. So here's the this is what Matt Pohl would do. Matt Pohl was a top of the class in mathematics and physics university, and he developed this Mathematica code. He did he
Well,
did. I
did
think
he have any instinct? That's what I'm talking about. Right
Well,
brain instinct.
this is the Turing wave, right?
I understand.
Yeah.
But this is mechanical. The real secret sauce is not discussed here. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Well,
And
it's back to the EV or the etherons, because it's the etherons that actually form this Turing wave. So that's kind of like the missing link, and that's what I keep saying, right? It goes back to the main
Paul's
building
talking
block.
about. Yeah, I agree. Paul was talking about transmutation of nucleons, recombining, Pavel's stuff. We got torsional fields at a nanoscale operating. That's the definition of an EVO. I understand that. But are we messing with charge when recombinant nucleons? Are we messing with spin? Or are we messing with both? That is the secret. We still haven't figured that out.
Well, it's both. It's about spin too. I can go in. We'll go into more of that. Yeah.
And for me, really, although the theory is nice and I like to, look at different models and try to apply these concepts to it, really, for me, it comes down to practicality. If I can see something and do something in the lab and see the results before my eyes, for me, that's what's real. And that's what I really kind of...
And has been for a long, long time. Yeah. It's the best way to do science.
Yeah. And the intuition thing and whatever it is, these divine downloads that come in the middle of the night or whenever, that's the
politics. The politics. I mean, the politics has to be right. If people are being bumped off or something, then it's not going to come out. So the politics has
that
to.
Time is over.
We have to kind of like mature as a species so that we can allow people. We can handle this stuff because. If they talked about, I was just thinking, if they talked about aliens on the radio or the television, what if children couldn't sleep at night for fear of being abducted or So anyway, we have to mature as a species so we can.
We're not going to have the time to.
Sorry,
we're not going to have the time to mature over the next 3,000 or 4,000 years at a normal pace.
Rip the Band-Aid off and get it over with now.
Yeah, that's exactly
absolutely.
That's exactly,
and that's what those guys are saying too, because they don't have any more patience themselves.
Yeah,
they're sick and tired of waiting for disclosure.
Yeah. And what you said about experiments, Paul, the subquantum kinetics, there are 29 predictions that came out of subquantum kinetics that over the course of 40 or 50 years have all come to fruition and come to truth. Paul worked in the ice, looking at the climate and the super wave, and me and Brandon went through 14 of them, I think, Brandon, it was, but we didn't do the other ones. We should do the other ones as well too. There's all the proof in the pudding for me, at least, essentially, right? When you learn about where Paul developed this and how it all came to his consciousness, essentially. Paul was asked to work into black projects, but he said no. And there's one other dude that said no as well. And you know whose name that is Ken Shoulders. Because Ken actually foiled the patent office, and Chris Beskar even talks about it. I have a little clip on my channel about how he foiled the patent office with the way he did it and bringing out his book and everything. These two guys are rock stars when it comes to all of this stuff.
We set up our workshop in Canada, and we get a knock on the door by the black suit. Anyway, okay.
That ain't gonna happen.
We're recording still. Why don't we end the recording now? And
oh shit, we forgot about the recorder.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, anyways,
sorry.
Okay. Well, anyway, have a wonderful rest of the day, everyone. Thanks for watching.
Hey,
cheers. Bye.
That's one thing we don't.